Hey everyone, welcome to today's masterclass on how to connect DecoNetwork with QuickBooks Online. Essentially, if you're using DecoNetwork, typically all your revenue is going through DecoNetwork, whether it's through a website or you're putting together quotes and orders in Business Hub. Everything flows into DecoNetwork from a sales perspective, and then we want to push all of that revenue sales information to QuickBooks so that we have it in there and can account for it. So to configure QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, or Zero, you're going to come into the admin reports and then accounting software integration. And this is where you can select what platform you want to be using. So again, we're going to talk about QuickBooks Online today. So integrate with QuickBooks Online. And what the connection is all about, it's all about mapping something that's occurring in DecoNetwork and then how we are entering it into QuickBooks. So we have all these variables to connect. It looks kind of more complicated than it really is. It's not bad at all. But if we charge shipping, if we're making money off of shipping and it's technically revenue, we want to record it as shipping revenue in QuickBooks. We don't want to just call it sales. So again, it's all about mapping. Before we start mapping, let's just briefly go over what all we're going to map. So one thing we can map are freeform items or extra charges, taxes, payment methods, payment terms. So the first thing I like to do before I start mapping anything is let's make sure that we don't have anything extra to map that we're not going to use, such as payment terms. In my shop, I've never used 15% deposit net 15. If I get rid of this in Deco, then I don't have to worry about it. Now, one thing to really keep in mind though, if we have ever had a transaction that has used this account term, I can't just get rid of it. I need it mapped so that it doesn't throw anything off previously done. So if you have a newer account or if you've never used some of your account terms or payment methods, that's the first place I would start. So I'm going to come into payment methods, telephone. I don't know about you guys, but I've never taken a method of payment as telephone. I've taken maybe a credit card or something over the phone, but telephone is not actually a way to, take a payment. Same with in person. Maybe this better default would be really cash. So maybe my manual payment methods are cash and check. Now let's come into customer settings, account terms. Like I said, I don't use this. I don't use this. These are all the defaults when we first sign up for DecoNetwork. I'm going to make net 30 my default, and I'm going to delete this. Now, something also, let's kind of flip the coin over. If at some point we added new account terms or we added new manual payment methods, you will need to map that to QuickBooks before you can you can sync again. A misconception when it comes to QuickBooks is very similar to the way that smart purchase orders work. And the reason why DecoNetwork changed it from live purchase ordering to smart purchase ordering. You do not automatically sync with QuickBooks. You have to click a button and sync now to push the sync to QuickBooks. It's not automatic. All right, so let's come back over to software integration, QuickBooks Online. Now, when it comes to DecoNetwork support resources, there are tons of help articles. If there is a help article that I've referred to more than any other, it is the QuickBooks Online integration. So QuickBooks Online integration. There's a different one for desktop. When you connect, you've got to be looking at this, and Lee is always updating them based on updates within DecoNetwork or in this case, potentially QuickBooks. So if you look at this, it walks us directly through what we're going to do. We've already gone to accounting software integration. We've enabled QuickBooks Online, and we're going to integrate. I've already kind of signed in using my own QuickBooks account. And the first thing you're going to need to do is within your QuickBooks account, you need to make a couple adjustments potentially. I mean, in all my times of helping users of DecoNetwork software connect QuickBooks Online, I've never had these first couple things not already be the case. But within QuickBooks Online, you first need to make sure that you're going to have the ability to record custom transaction numbers. Again, is typically always the case. You can also sync purchase orders that you raise through DecoNetwork. So if you're trying to record your purchase orders for ordering blank shirts as an expense, most shops in my experience don't do this. They prefer to record the expense themselves and just use this connection for revenue. But it is possible, and you need to go into QuickBooks settings to allow purchase orders to come in. Classes, QuickBook classes, I have never seen this used. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's over my head. The big thing to remember today is I am not an accountant. I can show you guys how to map things, but you cannot, hold me legally liable to anything. But classes, it's something you want to work with an accountant. And personally, when you connect this, you should be working with an accountant to make sure everything is mapped correctly. The last thing you want to do is start syncing all your orders to then have your accountant say, why is it going into this account and this account? Do it with them, have this documentation handy, and it walks you through everything. But again, the big thing we're going to be doing is mapping. And specifically, we're going to be mapping accounts, payment methods, payment terms, products, and services. So QuickBooks, I'm not going to show you my whole QuickBooks account, but come up here, all list. It's going to pull it up here. We need to make sure that all of the payment methods that I just showed you, we have recorded in here, +1 for a payment gateway. Account terms. So again, net 15, net 30, I need to have them in here. Products and services. When we charge a rush order fee or we sell a gift certificate or shipping charges, we need to have them in here as a product or a service. If they are a product, they could be inventory or non-inventory. So we need to map our line items, but let's go back to QuickBooks here. So automatically recalculate pending items. Again, you're going to want to talk with your accountant for these answers. I'm going to tell you what I have set up, and I did meet with my accountant for this. So yes, I always have everything automatically update. Order syncing. This is a very important one to go over with your accountant. When they are placed, when they are invoiced, when they are awaiting shipment or shipped. So invoiced, and this can be kind of tricky. If a customer pays for the order upfront, they make entire payment, that order is invoiced. If the customer is purchasing on terms, let's say that you put together an order and they're paying on net 30 terms. Well, that order isn't invoiced until it has been shipped, because it's you haven't taken payment, but you haven't completed the job yet, so it's not invoiced. So very important to make sure that you get this right, and ask your accountant. It's probably going to be based on cash or accrual accounting. Exclude orders before. So if we don't want to sync any orders up into a certain date, we can. So, this account is over a year old, but I could say, I don't want to sync anything before this Monday. Include test orders. So before you do a live sync, we can keep ourselves in test mode. Obviously, we would then want to include test orders, and we can sync just an order or two to make sure everything is working properly. I like to live dangerously, so I don't test. I just do a quick sync and then I'll sync everything. From Uh, Match existing orders. Yes. I definitely want to, so we can connect any orders with the same date, invoice number, customer information. If I create a order and then I update the price or add additional products, when I sync again, I want that order to update in QuickBooks. I don't want it to go in as a new order or a second order. Deposit um, deposit your funds into separate accounts. So again, this is something to ask your accountant. If you go yes, down at the very bottom, you're going to have more to map based on where you want these payments to go. I don't know where, yeah, deposit into separate accounts versus if we go no. Oh, it's not even there. So no, it just goes in undeposited funds. So we're going to keep it at no. QuickBooks classes, I have never seen this be used. Not saying, hey, it can't be used. I just have never came across it above my pay grade. Customer syncing. This is a pretty important one. So you have three options. You can sync every customer regardless of their order size or who they are. So if you have a network of affiliate sites and you're getting a bunch of orders, one-time customers, you may not want to record them as a customer in QuickBooks. It's up to you, but you may not want to. Instead, what you could do is only use a customer's name if they're an account holder, meaning they have net terms like net 30, net 15. If they have terms, then we'll use their name. If they don't, then we will just use a generic name like DecoNetwork customer. Or again, so the option that what I just described is this one. Hey, if you're on terms, we'll use your name. Otherwise, we'll use a generic name for you. Or we can use it for all orders or just use DecoNetwork orders for all orders. So I prefer, let's see, what did I use for mine? I use this. If you're an account holder, I look at you as a client typically with me. If you're not, you're more of a customer. And remember, I am more worried about the data from a mathematical standpoint in QuickBooks. DecoNetwork is really where my order history is stored, and that's what I'm going to reference more than anything else. Okay, if we do use a customer name, again, I'm going to use something like DecoNetwork. Didn't spell that right back in the day. To represent anybody who's not an account holder. They're a DecoNetwork customer. All right, customer name. This one seems kind of obvious to me. Anytime we have a company, I would rather use the company name over the customer name. So use the company name if available. Otherwise, let's just use the customer name. Or you can just use the customer name. Use same item. So I go no. And I wish I had a better explanation of this, but when we sync with QuickBooks, it's going to say, hey, it was the Gildan 5000 t-shirt, and this was the price versus, hey, line item sold for it. Okay. Use same item for extra charges. No, I'm not a fan of that always. So again, by changing that setting, it changes what we see here as far as extra charges. So within our settings, Now I'm gonna have to refigure some of that. But if I go back our settings, sorry. Oh, where are you? Extra charges. Any extra charges we have here. So maybe we have a bagging and tagging or a design creation fee or a I don't know. Yeah, you could have any type of extra charges. These are only applied within Business Hub. If you have different extra charges, you can record them as just extra charge, or you could map. Okay, this was a bagging and tagging. This was a design fee, whatever the actual work was related to. Okay. By the way, as you go down the list and you make changes, always click save. So when they are invoiced, yes, include, no, match, yes. Yeah, all undeposited. There. Network. Company name. Use the same. No. Use the same for extra charge. Yeah, we'll go ahead because I don't have any. Item account. Okay. So whenever we're making, we're selling a shirt and there's a blank product involved with it. We want to account for it based on the expenses. Sorry, I'm saying this terrible. Item account is sales, or it's sales of product income typically. Again, talk with your accountant. Your expense account is typically going to be cost of goods sold. So when we make sales, what account do we want it to be deposited in QuickBooks? And then if we're recording any expenses when it comes to the blank products, that is going to be the cost of goods sold. Sync purchase orders, I have it at no. I would much rather sync I'd rather get the actual invoice from Sanmar and suppliers and enter it into QuickBooks myself rather than have Deco push it. Deco is taking care of all of my revenue. And use QuickBooks Automated Sales Tax Center. Again, haven't really come across too many users using this. Sorry, I don't have more details. Remember, not an accountant. I'm good at just mapping this. Shipping items. So the order line mapping. So back to the mapping section, guys. Over here, we would be going into products and services in QuickBooks Online. And we need to create new services and non-inventory items. If we go back to our help article, it walks us again straight how to do this and how to do it for payment methods and account terms. So I've already done it. So shipping item, when I charge for shipping, I want it to go as shipping revenue. When I sell a gift certificate, it needs to go down as a gift certificate. Rush order is a rush. Digitizing, artwork setup fee, screen setup fee, extra charges. Freeform, we'll just also use we'll call it Etsy revenue for the moment. Payment surcharge. So this would be a new one I haven't added. So if we are passing on the credit card fees to our customers, we need to be actually accounting for that. So this would probably be a good situation. I'm going to click save. And let's just go ahead and add it. I'm thinking of a surcharge has to be a service. CC surcharge service. And I'm just going to save and close. Now, because I didn't already have it and I just did that, I need to refresh the list. I need to refresh the connection with QuickBooks to bring any of those updates back over. Okay. But oh, wait, no, I CC surge charge right there. So again, anytime you add a new term, payment method, service, or non-inventory, save what you're doing, refresh, and then you'll should find it there. Okay, tax exempt, sales tax. I'm not even in Georgia. Payment gateway. So anytime I take a payment through Deco Pay, I just we'll call it PayPal gateway for now. Again, I could go add a new account term, gift certificate, and telephone. Again, I would prefer not to have this. It's cash. Maybe I didn't save the name change, but that's my cash payment. All right, payment terms. Net 15, net 30, and due on receipt. I'll save. The key is not to see this message at the top, to see no red boxes that are giving us error messages. When I click configure, nothing's holding us up. Okay, so everything has been mapped. Remember what I said, nothing automatically syncs. It syncs when we tell it to. When I click sync now, if I view the sync queue, I can see what is queued up to be synced. So these are the orders, the customers, and the products. If I want to prevent something from syncing, I can click here and I can block it, whether it again be the customer, the order, or the product. If I want to see what's already been synced in the past, I can come here, view sync history. Okay, let's see. Kind of surprised I even had that many orders, but I didn't exclude orders before a certain date. So let's just try this. Let's exclude orders before today. And let's also make it when it's placed. Or actually, better idea, Chris. Let's just put ourselves in test mode. Now let's view the sync queue. Only one order, purchase order, and its related items will be synced. Okay, well, let's sync now. Let's see if we, okay, it finished, nothing to sync. Which means I have something wrong with my configuration. Let's see if I need to back this up because I may not have had any orders. There we go. Okay, it transferred. We can view the log. So it added, it found me as a customer and mapped that. So order number here. Let's everyone look away if it's not something you should see. We'll probably just cut the video there. And let's just search actually right there. And here is that transaction from DecoNetwork. So we could see the product, and then what else I charged. In this case, there's my shipping revenue. So that is its own line. And looks like this was a unisex Workflex chest pocket V-neck top. What is most important is it has the right customer, the right date, the invoice number, the terms, the payment amount, and even, yeah, everything else we need. It's really that simple, guys. I mean, there's all types of things that can break the connection. Chris has a lot more experience with that. Chris gets a lot of support tickets for QuickBooks issues, and it could come down to a number of things. So with that being said, hopefully again, this mapping all makes sense. It's really not that difficult. Definitely should be using this support article. It goes into a lot better detail than I did. I'm more so just demonstrating. It's nothing to look at like it's a big mountain to climb. QuickBooks Desktop, much more difficult. All right, with that, let's open it up with Q&A. Michael, banking section of QB. What transactions should be excluded from QB? Deposits made manually since payments are made through QB. Any other transaction that should exclude? So, deposit made manually since payments are made through QB. Not sure what you're asking, Michael. Banking section. Here would be my suggestion. Use DecoPay so you can take bank transfers and ACH through DecoNetwork, and you don't have to record it outside. But if a payment is automatically marked as paid in QuickBooks, yeah, I can't really. No, yeah. Don't really have an opinion, Michael. That's something to ask the accountant. But yeah, you don't want to double enter a payment for sure.
Yeah, and I can address that a little bit more. The block feature, I would say, rarely should be used.
Yeah.
You really want to limit that to only cases like the one you mentioned, Michael, where you've already entered something in QuickBooks, and so you don't want DecoNetwork to double that up. Otherwise, you're going to run into a sync error if the invoice has already been paid externally. So certainly you could, block a payment if that payment has already been made. On that point, I would mention, Zach, that was a good, kind of basic overview of the setup process. And you mentioned, like you mentioned, we do get a lot of requests through support on, issues that people are running into, sync errors, and there are a wide variety of reasons why a sync error may occur. Even the same sync error, may have multiple causes. So it's not as simple as here's the error, what do I do to fix it? Every issue needs to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. It's specific to your account data. So, it's really needs to be taken a look at a deeper level. But some kind of general pitfalls to avoid. I would say the main one is avoiding as much as you can modification of the data that is being synced over from DecoNetwork to your account software. So for example, a really common one is you may have on DecoNetwork multiple records for the same customer, right? And that's a whole nother issue that we won't touch, but let's say you do. And so when things sync across to QuickBooks, you now have duplicate records. Or maybe you already had a record in QuickBooks and then the record in DecoNetwork was slightly different. And so it didn't get matched. And so you have two records for the same customer. Maybe they're a little bit different, right? And so you might, the person operating QuickBooks might think, oh, this is the same customer. I should merge them together. And because of the way the sync works, DecoNetwork expects the data that it synced to be there. It's tracking it by an ID, an internal ID that the accounting software assigns to it. And anytime that's modified, that's when things start to break. And so that's why any modification on the accounting side can cause those sync errors. So things like merging customers, merging products, deleting customer records, making modifications to orders. Really, the sync is designed to be kind of hands-off in the sense that you're bringing across your revenue, your tax totals for reporting purposes. It's not necessarily meant to be used for things like invoicing outside of the platform. but yeah, and those are some kind of, some of the general pitfalls. And another thing, in people getting set up, a common question is, as you went through those steps, is what should I have this set to, or what should this be set to? And you gave a good rundown of, I guess, the typical option. Just keep in mind that may not be your option. Like Zach mentioned, check with your accountant for your, specific accounting needs, what the correct option is for you.
Yeah, you need a CPAs, something I could never do, Chris. I could never do what you do, and I could never do that. um, and Chris, here's a common question I get. What is being mapped from a customer standpoint? Are we using the email? Are we using the customer's name? How is that being mapped?
I think it depends from accounting software to accounting software. For QuickBooks Online, or QuickBooks in general, it's what QuickBooks calls the display name. And so on DecoNetwork, that ends up being, based on the setting that you configured, whether customers should be synced as their name or their company name. So either of those two, DecoNetwork full name or DecoNetwork company name, and that will map to the display name in QuickBooks.
Okay. Let's take a question. Talia, you should be able to talk now. But you're muted. And okay, while we're waiting for her, Chris, a couple more questions. So question for you, QuickBooks Desktop, have you heard anything about that? Because as far as I remember, QuickBooks was discontinuing any updates to it. And again, I can't really express an opinion, but I think they want everybody moving over to QuickBooks Online. Do you know if we're going to keep updating QuickBooks Desktop integration, if there's any news on that front?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, that they're kind of transitioning to the online platform entirely. DecoNetwork doesn't integrate with QuickBooks directly. We integrate with a tool that they provide, Inuit, the maker of QuickBooks, called the Web Connector. And so, that integration will continue to work. I assume at some point they'll discontinue that software, but judging by the type of software that it is, enterprise software, I would imagine that's going to take years for it to actually, be phased out.
Yeah. Well, and someone, if there's someone can help with the initial process that has QB Desktop Enterprise. So anybody doesn't know, I'm a Deco Pro, and another Deco Pro is Tommy Van. I don't know if it's Tommy's Tees or Deco Pro, Tommy Van. I can get you guys his contact information, or just go on to Business Hub, request Deco Pro. Tommy definitely has a lot more experience with QuickBooks Desktop and is able to solve a lot of things that I'm not smart enough to figure out. So anybody who needs that help, that would be my person I would work with. Desktop is a whole nother animal, Chris. I mean, and if you look at that support article, it's long. Okay, Melissa has a question on sales tax. Is there a report on Deco that shows what invoices are paid per customer and date? I do sales tax monthly, and it would be easier to have a report to have all paid invoices per month like QuickBooks. So, Chris, I'm going to let you answer this correctly, but when it comes to reports, guys, Deco really prefers to kind of empower their users to have the data to create whatever report you need to create. So here within reports, export orders, your CSV is going to be your most detailed report. What is often overlooked are the settings themselves. When we run a report, we can do it based on an order summary. So one line for the entire transaction, or we could break up each line in every order as its own line row in our CSV. But when you click on here, you need to make sure that you have all the data that's important to you. So I often am asked, I can't get this, and it's just because a box wasn't checked here. I would rather have most of these things checked and then delete what I don't need after I've exported. So something like sales tax, you're going to need to make sure, but that's not going to be on that one. Oops. Tax. So tax total, tax exempt. You can see it's easy to think, oh, I couldn't create that. Still haven't answered your question though. Here's another very important thing. Just like with syncing with QuickBooks, when you generate a report, it's going to come down to, okay, are we going to include everything that was ordered, invoiced, or shipped? So make sure you select the right option. But if I generate a CSV, I'm going to be able to get, all my orders for that date range, which is what you're describing. I need all my sales from September 1st to September 31st. And from here, I can make my report by sorting when was payment made. If payment wasn't made, I'm going to exclude those orders. If payment was made, then I know I need to include it in my report. Chris, there is no actual sales tax report that breaks it down that well, is there? That I thought there was. I know there's a sales tax report, but I don't remember it. Or no, what was sorry guys, my account looks a little different here.
Yeah, we don't have one, I think, specifically for taxes. I think the one that most people use is export order payments because
Yeah,
you may have, for example, an order that was partially paid during a given period. And the issue is we don't include a tax amount column in the
yeah,
payments export because of that, right? Let's
yep,
say the order is for $500, you received a $100 payment, and the breakup of those products, only one of those products could be taxed.
yep.
The other 10 items could not be taxed. So it's not straightforward as saying I received $100. This is the amount of tax because the actual product makeup may be a different split. So
Yeah.
it's not as simple as just adding a column saying, this is the amount of tax that correlates to the payment that you received. It would be an approximation, right? Like you
Yep.
received 25% of the payment. Here's 25% of the tax that's due on the order. It's just kind of an estimation rather than the actual tax amount.
That's where, yeah, Chris, several times I've had licensees point that out to me. Why is this not in here? Well, Chris just described it. I mean, we have to know what items were and were not taxed and what part of the order was paid for. It's just not possible. That's why generating the CSV report is often going to be your best tool, because it's going to allow us to, I can look at when payment was due or made and so forth, and I can my sales tax and pay it from there. But that's how I do it. I always generate a CSV, get rid of the information that's irrelevant to create my final calculations. Hopefully that was actually helpful, Melissa. What about Chris? How does the QuickBooks Online sales tax integration work? Can you touch on that at all?
You mean the automated sales tax center option?
Yes.
Yeah, so with that turned off, tax mapping is like any other mapping, item where you choose this tax in DecoNetwork correlates to this tax in QuickBooks. With the automated tax center set to yes, supposedly that's supposed to automatically happen behind the scenes. I don't really like that to be on. I
No.
think it's more straightforward to have that be off so that the user has the control to say this tax in DecoNetwork correlates to this tax because the tax configuration on the DecoNetwork side could be set up pretty complex. Maybe if you just have one tax rate, it'll work fine. But if you have tons of different tax rates defined. On DecoNetwork, it's also possible for a tax rate to apply to another tax, so tax on a tax. So, for that reason, there are cases where it could work, but I generally recommend for that to be off so that you can map your taxes manually.
Okay. Yep. No, that makes sense. Yeah, because this is not, turning this on doesn't all of a sudden make QuickBooks act like tax jar and start calculating sales tax for certain products for Nexus and all that. Correct, Chris? That is not what this tool is.
Right.
Okay. And when there's a sync issue, Chris, kind of what's the strategy from a client services perspective? I mean, how often is it that some type of data needs to be adjusted in Deco versus something is going around in QuickBooks? Because I know that makes it a big challenge. When somebody has a question or a problem within the software, we have control over it. When it comes to QuickBooks Online integration, I mean, it's a lot of finger pointing and testing, is it not?
Yeah. So, certainly raise a support ticket. What can get tricky is, by the time somebody raises a support ticket with us, they might have tons of errors, all different kinds and, all different causes. And those issues really need to be taken one at a time. It may be the case that someone just wants it to work. I have an order that hasn't synced and I need that to be synced. But if you have 100 errors in there, that's going to take a long time to get through that list. Again, these have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And so, support will do their best to try to work through those issues with you, but they, because that software is an external interface that we don't have access to, it is going to require our DecoNetwork member to go in and make adjustments or resolve things on the DecoNetwork end. Like some of the examples that we went through previously, for example, like the merged customer record or deleted customer record, those can be resolved on the DecoNetwork end by essentially telling DecoNetwork, forget that you previously synced that item. On the next sync attempt, go ahead and resync that customer or resync that product. And so we'll, go ahead and send it over again. If it was the case that, those had been manually merged on the accounting software, if that happens again, you're going to run into that issue again. So it takes a little bit of, I guess, education and maybe change in behavior on the DecoNetwork member end to, again, not make modifications on the accounting software so that those issues can be avoided in the first place.
Melissa asked, so when you integrate, you won't get duplicate payments. So the only time I could see duplicate payments is if I don't know, we're using QuickBooks Payment Gateway and then manually recording a manual payment within DecoNetwork. As long as the payment is going through DecoNetwork, it'll only be recorded one time, right, Chris?
Right. And if you are, again, that's kind of outside of the intended purpose of the accounting software to take payment through, let's say QuickBooks in this case. But let's say you are doing that, and you then have to mark the order as paid on DecoNetwork, like you mentioned, Zach, through a manual payment. That might be a case where you'll need to block those payments from syncing across because the system will attempt to sync them over, but they won't end up syncing over because QuickBooks is smart enough to know this invoice is already paid. You can't pay it again. And so you'll end up with a sync error saying, can't apply the payment because it's the payment amount due on the order is less than the payment you're trying to apply.
Cool. Fascinating stuff, Chris. But guys, I mean, I've been using this QuickBooks Online integration for the past at least 3, 4 years, whenever it really came about, which is longer than that. And I've not had a sink error in years, Chris. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I haven't had any problems. Maybe not enough business. Any other tips, things worth sharing, Chris?
I think you pretty much covered it.
Actually, I
We do
do
have.
know one more thing, Chris,
Sure.
that I see all the time. I don't know what time frame it is, but let's say you haven't synced in like a month or two. You'll get to kind of this screen, and then it'll kind of like keep you in this loop. And I probably should have informed you about this, Chris. Sometimes you need to unconnect yourself and reconnect it. So I don't know if you've ever witnessed that, Chris, but if you haven't used your account in a while, it often needs to be reconnected, and it doesn't always make it as obvious. Click disconnect and then reconnect. Sometimes that needs to happen. I only say it, Chris, if somebody hasn't ran a sync in months, but it was initially connected. Sorry, Chris, what were you saying before I
Yeah.
interrupted?
No, I was just going to reiterate about the support articles. We do have a setup help article for each of the different accounting software packages that DecoNetwork integrates with. That's always the starting point that we point DecoNetwork members to when they're first looking to get set up. And they do walk through each of the steps like you did on today's session, so they are a good resource as well.
Yeah, I mean, guys, in general, almost anything throughout Deco, the help article, there's a help article that's extremely detailed and goes over it. And then we make videos like today's. Well, Chris, I don't see any more questions. Thank you so much for joining. Everybody, again, when you have the questions or run into problems, come here, raise that support ticket. The worst thing you can do is just go into Facebook and complain. You actually have to ask for help and again, use the resources. Um, when you raise a support ticket, remember that sometimes it's got to be pushed around to the right person or it's more complicated. Just calling is typically not your best support option because there's an infinite amount of questions that could be asked. And there's a lot of different skill levels as far as support experience. So raise a support ticket. That's always going to be the best way to get help and also the quickest way from the right person.